And now the third section of the 13 postures. So once again, just to recap. If we're starting facing this way, all right, so we're in the basic posture. First section, we go 90 degrees, grasp the spurs, tail to all that. 180 degrees, and we do first section. 90 degrees, facing front, we do all of this. And then 180 degrees, facing the rear, which then takes us to the second section, which is a 90-degree turn to the side, right? Followed by a 180-degree turn to the other side, and then a 90-degree turn to the rear, right? Going very quickly, and then 180. So we're back to facing front at the end of the second section. And the third section starts, and we turn, and this time we're going to do 135 degrees to the diagonal. So that's the big change, right? So we go 90, 180, 90, 180, 90, 180, 90, 180, beginning of the third section, to the diagonal, which means that here, as I stop here, I sit down as always on the rear leg, bring the front foot. This time the front foot is going to point to the cardinal direction, so that when I shift my weight, I am now facing the diagonal, right? Because we still have that rule of rear foot is to the 45 degrees of where your front foot is pointing. So my front foot is pointing to the diagonal, 45 degrees to the diagonal gives me the cardinal direction. Right, so we stop here, end of second section, sit down on the rear leg, bring the left foot so that it's pointing to the cardinal, and it's not just the foot turning, it's again the entire left side which is turning, so the hip is turning as well, knee is facing in the same direction as the foot, shift the weight onto my left foot, turn and sit into drag down, because that's going to be the first move of the third section, drag down, right? So it's exactly the same thing that we saw before. We were here, we turn, hand, leading hand, palm facing down, trailing hand, palm is facing to the side, shift, slide the foot, sit down, and then pick up, drag down, push. Same exact thing as in the second section, except that we're doing it facing to the diagonal. So again, from here, third section, we're here, we shift, turn, stand up, yank, push. And this is going to be followed by twist the joint, which is stepping through and twist the joint, aiming towards the diagonal. So facing front. If I just finished drag down, I'm going to shift the weight forward. And as I shift the weight forward, my front hand, my right hand in this case, floats up. All right? Floats up. The left hand, because it was already essentially here in front, is going to simply turn slightly so that the hands are facing each other. So we go drag down, shift the weight forward, right hand floats up. Notice as I do that, my left foot also comes in towards my ankle. All right, so just to make it clear, I pushed, I shift the weight, bring the toes in, hands are up, palms facing each other, like holding a ball in front. But I'm actually going, instead of just bringing the toes here, I'm going to step all the way through and circle step, right? So I'm creating a circle step with a foot, so that I'm here. As I rise up, left foot circle steps until it's in front, and then I'm going to sit down and twist the joint. Sit down and turn. Sit down and turn. So the hands end up in front, palms facing each other like you're holding a pane of glass. Notice that there's all this turn and circle steps, but the line of energy is still the same. So I've pulled, pushed, so that's my line. As I step through, creating that circle in front, step through, circle steps, and then twist. But my hands and my body are still pointed along that line. That's going to be very important. Right? So we're not turning over here, we're sitting down. And so here the sit, my knee goes in the direction of my supporting foot, right? So you're not twisting the knee. You sit down, you open the hips. So this leg is opening, right? There's no weight on this leg. I'm sitting down. I can pick up that front foot, sit down. So all the weight is on the rear leg, sit down. The hands essentially switch places. Now, according to our law of the diagonal, if I'm sitting on the right leg, my left hand is the full hand, is the active hand. So here, it's both pushing down with this hand, but it's really lifting up with the left. So what you want to think of is after you've done drag down, that front hand catches the opponent's arm. You step through, and then this hand finds the elbow and lifts the elbow, because what you're doing is twisting somebody's arm until it's like this. So think of this as lifting, boom, until you're here. That's twist the joint. Twist the joint, like yank, is one of the other part of the 8 basic moves. So you have the 4 major ones that we saw at the very beginning, right? You have push, press, ward off, and roll back. Those are the 4 major ones. And then you have the 4 ones, and you'll see that it matches what we're doing with our feet. If you want, the 4 major moves are the 4 corners of our square, and then you have 4 minor moves that are the 4 diagonals, and they'll make a lot more sense later. So the 4 major moves are yin and yang of attack and yin and yang of defense, right? Push and press, and ward off and roll back. And the 4 minor moves are variations on that. So the first one that we saw was a yank. The next one that we see is twist the joint, right? So those are to the corner. So we'll see there's 2 more moves that we'll see. Again, moves, qualities of energy. So yank is the quality of suddenly pulling something. We'll see later on that it can be done in any direction, but that's the yank. Twist the joint is creating a spiral in your opponent's body. So you're twisting, you're turning. So it's the quality of creating a circle, not just a circle, but actually a spiral, because it has a direction, right? When I'm here, my direction is forward. So it's not just creating a circle, it's creating a spiral. So that's twist the joint. Creating a spiral in your opponent's body, creating a spiral, opponent's arm in this case. Okay, so yank, twist the joint. This is followed by elbow strike. So just to be clear, so we were here, we turn, we go to the diagonal, so rear diagonal, yank, so this drag down, twist the joint, followed by elbow strike. Elbow strike is a weird translation of what it's really about. So we've done drag down, twist the joint, elbow. The crucial thing here, the thing to remember is that, so we've just done twist the joint. Elbow strike is actually a deflection. And that's important because here, we're going to shift the weight forward onto, in this case, the left foot. So as we twist, notice my foot is pointed to the diagonal. So when I bring my full weight, so I'm not leaving my right foot trailing behind, I'm bringing my foot in with me. That means that my hips are now going to be facing in the same direction as my left foot, right? Because the weight, the foot that is supporting the weight of the body points in the direction that the whole body is going to point in. So in this particular case, it's going to be here. So if I'm here, and so we were here holding on, but if I just relax the hands, shift the weight and turn, so now I'm facing this way. Notice that what happens is my right arm sweeps through space, right? I was here, and we're just going to look at the right hand, and now I'm sweeping through space. Imagine somebody trying to punch you in the lower belly with a family jewels, if you want to raise the stakes, and you sit and turn. Notice that this is the deflection. Something is coming towards you, sit and turn. Something is coming towards you, sit and turn. And then from that deflection, right? So the hands were here, sit and turn. Notice the left hand basically does nothing, it just hangs in space. And then I'm gonna raise the knee and the hands at the same time. Notice now my elbow is pointing in the same direction as my knee, which is in my line, in my front line. I step down, I expand, and then I squat and brace myself. And that's elbow strike, because the mistranslation is that it's not a strike, it's receiving. Somebody comes at you, deflect, rise up, and then brace yourself so that the person falls onto the elbows, which is why here again, this is not leaning forward and striking with the elbow. This is turning, so you're deflecting the attack. You step enough that you can have a nice, kind of slightly wider stance than normal. You're here, and then you sit. You don't shift forward, you sit and you brace yourself with that left leg, that rear leg. So you're here. Elbows are up along the horizontal. The hand stands in front, and you're here. Boom. And that's elbow strike. So the important thing is deflect, so you're drawing in and then bracing, right? So it's draw in, and then sit. Not forward, sit. The energy is downwards, bracing yourself. Again, from here, sit, draw in, sit, and brace. Boom. Okay? But thing to remember, line of sight and also where you're looking. So if we started with drag down, that's the line that I'm going along. That's the line of intent. Twist the joint. Line of intent is here. Same thing here. I want my elbow to be along that same line. Right? Line. The line is here. Even though my foot is pointing this way, my intent is in front here. I deflect here, but my intent is over there. Right? So the deflection here, that turn here, is momentary. I'm just deflecting, but my intent is still along that line. That's the important part. Okay? So we were here, bring the foot to cardinal, turn to rear diagonal, drag down, twist the joint, elbow, and then shoulder strike. Shoulder strike is an actual strike, unlike elbow strike. It comes out of the elbow strike, and essentially it's dropping the hand. The left hand or the rear hand cups the shoulder so that now you can rise up off of that rear leg, and notice I'm picking up the heel of the front leg, because again, I'm bracing myself with the front leg. I'm not leaning onto the front leg. I'm actually rising up onto the back, bracing myself with the front, and then using my waist to tilt. And that's what's going to bring us that downward short push. Okay? It's called shoulder strike because you're literally hitting with the shoulder. And it comes out of elbow strike because if you imagine somebody's coming towards you and you've deflected an elbow, so they've fallen onto your elbow. So this is the distance between yourself and the other person. Is literally the distance between your shoulder and your elbow. So now if I want to hit that person, I'm going to drop and hit, right? It's that short. It's that very short distance. That's what we're going for with the shoulder strike. The thing to then remember is as we do the elbow strike, remember I was saying that this is, you're bracing yourself. You're not reaching up to hit. Notice because if you do that, your leg is extended, right? If you're reaching with the elbow, which gives you then nothing left for the shoulder strike. If you remember that you're bracing yourself for the elbow strike, your leg here is bent, which gives you that extension, and that's what powers the shoulder strike. Right? Powers the shoulder strike. That leg goes up, the upper body tilts down, and that's where the power is. Right? If with the elbow strike you were committed fully and your weight's on the front, there's no power. There's nothing there. Your legs are not helping you. So again, the legs are providing the power for all of these moves, right? So I'm going to do it facing this way so you can see. So it's drag down, twist the joint, elbow, shoulder. And then we're going to do central equilibrium. Right? Central equilibrium. From the shoulder strike, we sit back on the rear leg. Notice as I sit back, I turn the hips so they're facing front. Left hand stays in same place in space, so the right arm just follows. So now that I'm facing front, my hips are facing front, I shift the weight forward. And as I shift forward, my right arm floats up. And there's no weight on left foot, so all my weight is on the right leg. Right arm is up. And then we're going to step back. But first, right, boom, shoulder strike, sit back, shift forward, ha, and then step back, boom. Okay, so shoulder strike, sit back, shift forward, separate the hands. All right, left hand drops down, right arm goes up. So the thing to remember with central equilibrium is that the weight that's supporting your foot, or the side, right, is the same as that goes up. There's the one place where we don't have the diagonal for a specific reason. Right, because this is a reminder, this is a pivot point. We'll see, because now we're going to start moving backwards. Central equilibrium is not an application. It's not a martial art move. Central equilibrium is a reminder to come back to the center. Notice my hand is right above my head. So this is a return to the center, which is why it's called central equilibrium. It's a return to the center, a realignment of the body within yourself. Bringing back to the mind that vertical line that goes through the body. Okay? In all of this, there's always various martial applications. So you can actually think of here this as a deflection or as a protective move. It's less important to think of those things than to really come from here. This is the heaviest, fullest, most committed we've been in a while. Come back to center. Come back to center. And then we're going to come back and step back. Okay? So, to recap, we finished the second section here. We turn, bring the foot and the left side of the body until it faces the cardinal side. And then we turn until we face the rear diagonal. Drag down. Twist the joint. Elbow strike. Shoulder strike, and then turn and central equilibrium. And then we step back. So the same foot, so in this case the left foot, goes back and sit down into ward off. Right? So we were doing shoulder strike, the right leg is forward, sit down, shift the weight onto the right leg, bring the left toes in, then step back onto the left foot. So there's no change of weight. The weight is on the right foot, and it stays on the right foot until the left foot is brought back, and then you sit down, and all you're doing is bringing the arm in front. So it creates a nice roundedness. All right, so you were here, left arm is relaxed, sit. Now I'm sitting down, 70% of the weight on the rear leg, 30 on the front. All right, so it's here. All right. We're halfway through the third section. This is the longest one. So again, we're facing front at the end of the second section. Turn to the diagonal. This shoulder strike takes us here, and then step back. And now we're going to step back along the same line. So we're going to try to keep that same level of intent towards the diagonal, but now we're going to travel backwards along it. But it's the same line. It's important because otherwise you start losing your space, right? We're going to the diagonal and back from the diagonal back towards the center. So from here, we sit back, and then we take another step and roll back. So what we've done is shoulder strike, sit back, rise up, central equilibrium, step back, ward off, big circle step and take a step back, roll back, right? Roll back. The arm that was in front in ward off ends up against the elbow. The goal here so from central equilibrium, ward off. So ward off, we're bracing. This arm is like a shield. Then we step back and then we draw back. This is roll back. And notice here the drawback, you were just rising up and turning. The arm a little more like 45, palm facing your face, right? But notice that what you're doing here again is this is the line of intent, and you're going to cross it just a bit. So this is not over here, it's just here. It's just slightly past the line of intent. Again, if you remember this, if there's a shield, somebody's pushing towards you, or throws a punch or pushing, and you're going to deflect that push just enough so that now it's going that way. So it's just doing a rollback just enough to deflect the energy this way, which is why we're not going here, we're going here, right? Just past the center line. So let's recap where we are. Drag down, twist the joint, elbow, shoulder, central equilibrium, ward off, roll back. Okay, it's all done to the rear diagonal. Okay, so from central equilibrium, it would be step back. So this is ward off, roll back, and then we're going to take another step, still along that same line, sit back and push. This is the exact same thing that we've done in the first section. Remember in the first section where after here, we turn, boom, we sit back, cross the hands, drop the elbows and push. Same exact thing, except that this time, so we were doing it here, ward off, roll back. We take a big step, draw the hands in, sitting down on the left leg, drop the elbows, rise up and push. Okay? So from central equilibrium, step back, step back, step back, rise up and push. Okay? So from central equilibrium here, and we step back, step back, step back, and push. Okay? So as simple as you can make it. From here, from roll back, another big step, and as you shift the weight backwards, the hands come in. As you sit, drop the elbows, and then rise up and push. Okay? And then that's followed. So again, we're traveling. We've only done the very beginning, first quarter of the third section. Twist the joint, elbow strike, shoulder strike, central equilibrium, ward off, roll back, sit back, push, and then press. So all I've done here is, let's see, after central equilibrium, ward off, roll back, sit back, drop the elbows, push, and press. So what I've done is I've shifted the weight from the rear into the front. I sit down onto that front leg, bring the toes in slightly so my hips are facing front, and then I'm going to turn the left hand in this case and press. Meaning I'm hitting with the wrist. And remember again our diagonal, my weight is on the front leg, so I'm striking with the left wrist. That's the way to remember which hand to use. If my weight is on the right leg, I'm hitting with the left wrist. And this is press. It's exactly the same thing that we did in the beginning, in the first section. Before we did press here, now we're doing it here. And notice before, if my weight was on the left, I was striking with the right wrist, supporting it with the right hand. and then I shift the weight. Now I'm doing it with the opposite wrist. But it's the exact same move, so it has the same quality of heaviness, short. It's a short, like, short, heavy. I'm not trying to go far. It's not like a push. It's, that's press, right? So before we did it here, now we do it here. Boom. Otherwise, it's the same thing. And this is a good example of how, again, these are qualities of energy. And they will be expressed differently depending on where your weight is and what you're doing and the direction in which you're expressing them. But the quality is the same. So this is press, this is press. We'll see later, this is press, right? There's a lot of other things that we can do where it looks very different, but the quality is the same thing. And that's why I want to make sure that you get a grasp of this, that we're talking about qualities of energy. And this is why, in the end, it's going to be important to know these, because you're playing with qualities of mind, qualities of intent, and qualities of energy, which is why even if you never use this as a martial art, if all of this fighting methodology and symbolism doesn't appeal to you, it doesn't matter. The point of it is not that we're learning how to fight necessarily. The point is that we're engaging the mind and our intent in changing the qualities that we're expressing. So now the body is now being aimed in different ways and being used in different ways, and you're sitting in your body in different ways. Because if you didn't have that specificity, then you would just move the hands through the air and look pretty, but you'd just be moving the hands through the air, and there'd be nothing beyond it. And the only benefit you would get out of that is, well, you're kind of moving your shoulders and your feet, and that's about it. But here, going from here to here and really thinking, sitting down, now your mind is sitting in your waist, in your hips. You're thinking about where your weight is. You're thinking about how you're arranging all these different body parts, and how your intent is here in the wrist. Before it was in your hands, now it's in your wrist. So you're placing your intent in different parts of the body, which brings a better body awareness. You can't be unaware of your body if you're doing this correctly, because you have to think about where your intent is and which part of the body is being expressed, which part of the body is being supported, and which part of the body is then expressing energy. Okay? That's the real benefit of all of this. That's where the specificity is actually quite crucial to really getting the benefit of all of this. But we're not even finished in the third section. So we're finished the second section here, turned to the rear diagonal, drag down, twist the joint, elbow strike, shoulder strike, come back, central equilibrium, sit back, ward off, roll back, sit back and push, shift forward and press. And now, just like all the other ones, we're going to step back and we're going to turn, do a 180-degree turn to the front diagonal, and do the exact same thing, except with the left hand leading. Twist the joint, elbow, shoulder, etc. Just like before. So the transition is exactly the same. Except that we finished here. It looks complicated, but it's basically the same thing. We step back onto the left foot, shift the weight until our weight is fully onto the rear leg, turn, bring the foot so it's pointing to the cardinal, and turn. So same exact mechanic. We shift all the way back onto the rear leg, bring the toes in, shift back onto the foot that we just turned, right? So we were here. The main difference here is that our weight is on the front leg. So we're just simply step back, shift the weight back, the hands just release and loosen, bring the toes until they're facing front in this case, shift, and then here now, drag down so that we're ready to do the next thing. Okay, so it's the exact same thing, same transition. The rules are the same for the transition. The main difference is that you're stepping back, shifting, return, and then shift. Okay, and again, we're going to do the same thing. Whereas before, we finished second section here, and we do essentially what would be slightly over 90 degrees, but then we're back to 180, and then 90 degrees, and then 180, so that we finish the 13 postures facing the rear diagonal. All right, so we would be here. Let's see if I have my feet correct. Here, here, push, press, which is going to be here, press. And then we're going to sit back, bring the toes in, bring the hands in, facing front, and then carry the tiger from the warm-ups. And that's the end of the 13 postures, right? So from the second section, you were here, you turn, face, first the foot face the side, and then we turn to the rear diagonal, drag down, twist the joint, elbow, shoulder, central equilibrium. Step back, ward off, roll back, sit back and push, press. Step back, turn, face the front diagonal, drag down, twist the joint, elbow strike, shoulder strike, central equilibrium, ward off, roll back, sit back and push and press. And then step back, turn 90 degrees, so we're going to face front again. Boom, facing the front diagonal. Drag down, twist the joint, elbow, shoulder, central equilibrium, ward off, roll back, rack, push, press, then step back with that rear foot, bring the foot so it faces the cardinal, facing the rear diagonal, drag down, twist the joint, elbow, shoulder, central equilibrium, ward off, roll back, sit back and push, press. And then final turn, again stepping back, releasing the hands so they're facing front, turn, bring the foot so that the foot faces front, shift the weight now back onto that leg, right hand, right foot come in, that right hand comes on the inside, and then separate the hands and the feet, carry the tiger. Come back to center. The left foot comes in, hands come, fold in front of the belly. And we just take a few breaths, bring your focus back to the center, to the breath, to the vertical. And then we just cool down, okay? And that is the entirety of the 13 postures.